Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com. This week, we talk with two of the leaders at Catapult ERP, a Microsoft partner based in Vancouver, BC. Catapult has a long history in the Microsoft channel, deploying and supporting Dynamics NAV and CRM-based solutions. The team has kept its eye on the larger enterprise software marketplace as well and has worked with other popular products in the past, like Salesforce. But recently, the team made the decision to return its CRM focus back to Microsoft, and it's that decision that prompted us to have them join us again this week. Elliot Fishman is Catapult's CEO, and Jeff Bacon is VP of Client Development, and they talk with us this week about the state of Dynamics 365, the new opportunities they see in adding cloud infrastructure services to a Dynamics practice, and signals they have been seeing for Microsoft's cloud roadmap that are influencing their company's decisions as a Microsoft partner. So let's get started. Elliot and Jeff, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming back.
Thanks. It's good to be back.
Yeah, thanks, Jason.
And you guys are joining from Vancouver, BC, right?
That's right.
How are things there today? I actually talked to someone else from Vancouver, and I heard good reports on weather-wise anyway.
Yeah, we've had a long, wet winter, and now we're getting, it seems to have shifted very quickly into summer weather, and we're hoping it's here to stay.
Yeah, I hope so. At least a few months anyway.
How are things in your neck of the woods?
Nice. I mean, it's finally mild and spring-like in New England, which I'll definitely take until it turns blistering hot in another couple weeks here.
Yeah.
You know, the reason I wanted to have you back and talk again was, well, it started with an article that, Elliot, you were kind enough to sort of participate on, one that recently got some pretty good traction, I think, with our readers. And it was talking about kind of the topic of partners who had considered Dynamics 365 sales and customer experience apps in addition to Salesforce and maybe even other competing solutions out there, and had, then eventually decided to come back to focusing on the Dynamics 365 solutions for whatever reason that they had. And you were part of that, and thank you for taking part in that piece. And I think it really did strike a chord with our readers. Maybe we could just start by you talking a little bit about where you are at, maybe some of the decisions that Catapult has made recently in terms of the focus on the Dynamics suite as opposed to other suites that are out there that you might have been working on.
Definitely. Historically, we've always been deeply invested in the Microsoft channel and in Dynamics, both Dynamics NAV and Dynamics CRM. And so that has always been the focus for Catapult. And what we found over the years with the increase in information and demos and trials that is available to prospective customers is that the sales process has changed dramatically. And so prospective customers tend to show up fairly self-qualified for a given technology platform or another. So we get prospects who ask us for a dynamic CRM solution or something else. And, Dynamic CRM is an amazing platform, but Salesforce is as well. And there are organizations, for whatever reason, who are inclined to look at Salesforce as a platform for their Salesforce automation, marketing automation, and customer service solutions. So we found we were getting requests, and rather than try to change their minds and get them focused on the other platform that we offered, we started a Salesforce consulting practice a couple of years ago and got that off the ground with moderate success. And we're pretty convinced that if we kept at it, we could have built up that capability. But what we learned along the way is that it's a very different kind of partner channel. Salesforce has a different relationship with their partners than Microsoft does. And I think our legacy of being embedded in the Microsoft channel serves us really well. We really know how to navigate the Microsoft organization and work with them as they evolve their capabilities. And with the shift to Dynamics 365, things suddenly got really, really interesting, I think, from the point of view of capabilities across the platform. And when we looked at our business as a whole and tried to rationalize our offering, we felt that we would ultimately be serving our customers better by reallocating resources back into Dynamics and basically dropping our focus on Salesforce. So in doing so, we don't mean any disrespect to the Salesforce customers or to the good work that the people at Salesforce are doing to bring innovative technology into the market. We just think Microsoft is doing a fantastic job. And there's some really exciting changes with Dynamics 365 and more than enough to wrap our arms around and build a compelling offering.
Yeah, you raise an interesting point there, and I can totally understand it. The idea that, some prospects start that conversation with you with Salesforce already in mind. That's the one that they think they need to evaluate first. In that case, given what you're seeing and the choices you've made, are you just sort of accepting that some of those companies just aren't going to be worth pursuing anymore, or do you find that more companies are changing their perspective on what they want to look at?
It's a kind of an interesting discussion. As Elliot said, a lot of customers are self-qualified. And I think in that regard, when customers or prospects come to us and they're after a certain platform, the 98%, they've already made that decision. So it's not like we are going to change their mind. Very often, we get in discussions that it's Salesforce or Microsoft, and really they're the two most common and most effective players in the channel. I'd say that we've had some moderate success in, kind of going to battle and having a robot battle versus Salesforce and Microsoft. But largely speaking, they're a different customer that's pursuing the Salesforce option versus Microsoft. When we see Microsoft, they're very friendly and they have a strategy that says, hey, we're a Microsoft shop. They are invested in the platform in Office 365. They may have an ERP that's actually already Microsoft, and they're already identified as a Microsoft shop, so to speak. Whereas when we see customers that are pursuing Salesforce, they're looking at like Google Office or Google Apps. They're very kind of young and innovative type organizations that are pursuing something like a Salesforce versus the companies that are running on a Microsoft platform. So as Elliot said, it's not really a huge impact. Most of the clients that we were getting, even while we were pursuing a Salesforce strategy, they'd come to us already with a platform in mind. So, I don't think we're really seeing any downturn, obviously, in our business. But at the same time, I think the customer really does have the power these days to choose, and are typically coming to us with a platform in mind already.
That's an interesting point. And maybe we could broaden the conversation just a little bit. So, when you talk about the partner technology outlook, I mean, it goes deeper than just CRM. And I think we were talking about this when we last chatted about having you guys come on. But I think, Elliot, you were the one who was saying, it sounds like you've really seen a sort of maybe an inflection point, or you've changed your perspective on where you see Microsoft in terms of their direction and the promise in their platform going forward, where maybe you weren't as confident or weren't as certain about what their vision was. You've gained more confidence recently. Is that fair to say?
I think so. I mean, I've always been confident that Microsoft makes some fantastic products for business in terms of CRM and ERP solutions. They've always been committed to their offerings and have a loyal customer base. So in that sense, I've always had tons of confidence in Microsoft, but I'm certainly more excited about the vision. And I think Microsoft is really showing quite a bit of vision and emerging as a market leader when it comes to enterprise business software, more than I've seen before. With the shift to Dynamics 365, it's funny because I've read various accounts of it online, which describe this as sort of a branding shift more than anything. This is just a relabeling of what was previously known as Microsoft CRM or Microsoft Dynamics NAV or GP or what have you under this D365 label, much the way we've seen on the Office side with Office 365. And I think it's much, much more than that. I do agree that there's a branding component to this, and it's long overdue, frankly. I think Microsoft's had a real challenge in their Dynamics business with branding, partly because they acquired most of these platforms, not CRM so much, but on the ERP side, we've seen Microsoft acquired NAV, GP, and AX, all which had customer bases in existence. So it was always difficult for them to sort of create a harmonized brand around these products. they sort of had to maintain the legacy branding to some degree. And so now finally, I think we're seeing this shift towards more of a harmonized brand where D365, Dynamics 365 is the umbrella brand that represents enterprise business capabilities in the cloud, which I think is significant. Just from a marketing point of view, helps the customer make a lot more sense of what the Microsoft offering really is. And then from an actual capabilities point of view, I think it's a fantastic change because I think what it represents is a breaking down, at least notionally at the outset, and eventually in really concrete terms of these traditional sort of silos between what you'd call CRM or front office capabilities and ERP or back office capabilities. Now Microsoft is starting to evolve capabilities that are oriented around specific business processes like sales or finance or operations, and making them available to customers basically as apps in the cloud that will ultimately share a common data model. And I think that is a massive shift and something to get very excited about.
Yeah, and I'd add to that, from a technology standpoint, that what we saw when D365 was being released is it's made Microsoft somewhat cool again. We had a lot of, I would just say, siloed based applications with CRM and or NAV, and to extend those platforms or to get them to work with even Office was actually a really big feature set or a big release. And what we're seeing now is this is breaking down technology barriers where you can run these tools on a mobile phone, you can run them on a website. It kind of doesn't really matter. It's really taken infrastructure out of the game. So where there was a huge outlay in terms of getting things stood up and integrated from an infrastructure standpoint, you don't have to worry about that anymore. It's actually just a service you kind of plug in and you bring your own device. And then on top of that, Microsoft's also adding some really cool little goodies like Microsoft Flow, for example. So if you want to have workflow that operate in between these tools like finance and CRM, you can start to have enterprise level workflow that's working in between these things as a service that they're just kind of bundling in while you subscribe. So you're starting to get a lot more real integrated enterprise applications, not just these siloed based tools that we used to have as well. So it's really breaking down the barriers from a technology perspective.
So you've named a lot of the new technology that you see coming down the pike, and I absolutely agree. There's a ton of promise with a lot of those areas, and they're doing a lot of things differently than in the past. Do you feel like the prospects you're talking to, or even existing customers that you've already engaged with, that they're getting the message that there are some things that really are different now in the future roadmap that are diverging or taking a very different approach than in the past?
I still think there's a messaging challenge. They know that there is something absolutely different with D365. However, my sense is that it isn't driven by a brand or by Microsoft. It's actually, a little bit more subtle than that. It's driven by the fact that their own IT strategy is kind of dictating the fact that they need to do something about their aging servers or equipment, and they want to move in an online world. And of course, then the path leads to, well, what is Microsoft offering? And then they start looking at D365. And then from there, because it's, again, Microsoft, they have I'll just say ample complexity with regards to licensing. And it really is our job to help them navigate, what the right solution is, what the right level of services are in the cloud world. It's a very different world, I guess, than what it used to be, which was pretty easy. You buy some licenses, you get a server stood up, and away you go. In the new world, it is a little bit different. It is very easy once you get there, but at the same time, clients need a lot of guidance in terms of understanding what the right level of service subscription really is. So to answer your question, I think really clients are getting it, but it's almost self-dictated by the fact that they are wanting to move to the cloud, and then they own an asset already being Microsoft. So they're looking towards that as a reasonable next step.
Yeah, it's a fairly complex sort of approach vector that sounds like you have to take. The companies that are already sort of on a path toward moving beyond what they have now, as you were saying, if they have a lot of on-prem hardware or that is aging out and they're already looking forward, and you have to sort of catch them on that trajectory they're already on, it sounds like, with ability to sort of understand where they're heading and then sort of translate that into what you think you can offer them through Microsoft technology. And that goes, I mean, would you say that's fair to say? I mean, that there's sort of you're trying to sort of move with them as they're already moving. That's one of the big conversations I think you hear is where are companies really? Are they really already on the move, and being proactive or not?
For sure. And the challenge too, of course, is everything you read online is simple, right? It's, hey, it's $69 or $79 a month and away you go. No infrastructure. This is basically a service. You can set it up. The reality is start to peel that onion a little bit, is if a client's currently running that piece of software and that solution, there is no migration path to the cloud. You basically have to kind of upgrade, do a series of steps, get it cloud ready, and then port it over to the cloud, do a bunch of data migration, et cetera. So again, getting back to this guidance standpoint, the perception is, well, this is going to be really easy. The reality is it is absolutely easy to get there, but in order to get there, there's a lot of things you need to do and still a fair amount of complexity that's involved. And so again, that's where we're finding a lot of, I'd say, value with clients, is just educating them on how do you actually get there and what is your move to the cloud. Yeah. And in some cases, it's actually not even moving to the cloud. It's actually getting cloud ready and taking the first step to get them onto getting rid of boxes, for example, in the closet, and getting them ready to have like infrastructure hosted on an Azure environment. So, there's lots to this and lots of different angles, but ultimately, yeah, I think the conversation is about clients wanting to move in that direction.
Is that a new or different type of consulting that your team has to do when it comes to advising on server management or server migration, cloud infrastructure? Is that something that would you say you've had to pick up as this model has evolved?
I would say that it's become a much bigger factor in our offering across all of our projects. It shows up a couple different ways. In the past, when we were working and deploying solutions primarily in an on-premise environment, a client would have their own servers. They had either a team or an individual or another partner, potentially an outsourced provider, who would maintain that technology. And really, we either were just installing applications on existing infrastructure, potentially speccing out new infrastructure, which they would then procure and install, and then we would just handle the software part of it sometimes. So oftentimes it was a bit of a handoff. And now, more and more, particularly in the mid-sized customer segment that we serve, we deal with a lot of companies in that sort of 50 to 150 employee kind of size range. These are companies that more and more are realizing that maintaining boxes and wires, hardware infrastructure is not their core strength. In fact, it's not very many companies' core strength, except for companies like Microsoft and Amazon and Google, companies that can really spin up massive data centers. And with the availability of infrastructure as a service through a variety of different providers on pretty much a commodity basis, it makes the idea of on-premise infrastructure really questionable, in fact. And, more and more, even 2-3 years ago, we still were hearing resistance or pushback from clients who wanted to maintain local infrastructure. But now, especially when it comes to any sort of upgrade, that's a classic situation. We want to upgrade CRM from an on-premise solution to CRM Online or Dynamics 365. Well, that eliminates the need for on-premise infrastructure. But on the ERP side, where licensing isn't as much, it's moving towards subscription licensing, but customers are still, in many cases, buying their licenses and still need to provide infrastructure in some way. The service that we offer really has to extend to cover that. So they come to us and they say, well, okay, so we're going to buy these Dynamics NAV licenses, for example, and we're going to install and implement Dynamics NAV. What infrastructure will we install that on? And so, of course, we have to have an answer to that. And rather than just provide specifications, as a cloud services provider, we can now actually provision the infrastructure with a few simple clicks. And that's not an exaggeration. It's actually fairly easy to spin up virtual machine resources on Microsoft Azure. It's very cost effective for clients because they pay for it on a utility basis. They just pay for what they actually use for server uptime, which means we can actually shut down servers at night or during periods when they're not needed to minimize costs. So it's really changed our role because now we have an infrastructure specialist who's part of our team and who's one of the busiest consultants in our office. Because not only are we providing that infrastructure capability, but we're also figuring out how to integrate that with their local resources as well. So, for example, single sign-on becomes a huge question. Not even a huge question, it just becomes a question every single time. How do we make sure that when we sign into Office, we can also pass those credentials on to our Azure environments as well, while we use Azure AD Connect for that, or AD Sync. So we have a whole bunch of options now to create these sort of cloud and hybrid environments, and it's really extended the role that we play right into that infrastructure space.
Yeah, and just adding to that too, it's also added a different dimension where, as Elliot said, we're kind of owning the environment. But one of the more expensive pieces in terms of hosting and or even subscription-based products like on D365 is data. So we're actually starting to advise on data management strategies as well. So it's really forcing us to kind of pick up our game around some of the core technologies that are related to these products.
That is interesting, and you have resources who are really specializing in that. Do you see that as something that potentially you'll just continue to ideally grow yourselves and kind of keep that segment or that portion of the work in-house as it extends?
Yeah, I think it's really value added. We're finding more and more, I would say, kind of planning and strategic type of roles, whether that's hands-on with integration, but even before that, doing a lot of design and planning of how are we going to get there? What does that environment look like? And then once it's stood up, as Elliot said, what's the maintenance of it? So if you don't need your testing environment, well, let's shut it down and have a routine for it. What about your data strategies? Well, we got to make sure we're moving that off-site so you guys aren't paying for it. So there's a lot of work, and obviously as we get more of our clients and prospects onto that service, we're just going to have more of that work. So definitely something we're interested in maintaining and keeping in-house for sure.
Yeah, I'm interested if I could dive into that topic just a bit more. Now that you've been working with clients on some of those challenges, how has that been going for companies when they've made the decision to adopt public cloud for their infrastructure needs? In particular, thinking cost-wise, I mean, is it working out in terms of cost, in terms of the management of the infrastructure? Anything you've learned that either was unexpected or that companies have to make sure they really manage carefully?
The truth is, I haven't seen any data on our own customers. I've seen analyst reports, of course. That said, anecdotally, I can say that we haven't migrated a single client onto Microsoft Azure or another public cloud solution and had them decide to bring it back in-house. It seems to be an approach that eliminates a whole set of headaches that our clients are more than happy not to have. I think in an on-premise world, they're very used to things blowing up every now and then. That's kind of what happens when you run a bunch of hardware in a server room or more likely in a server closet. In your offices, every now and then something, you have a hard disk that fails or something overheats. Temperature management is a problem, or your some networking gear fails, or you find that performance slows down so much because RAM is insufficient or there isn't enough processing power. And so in the cloud, we can just reallocate resources, sometimes on the fly without even shutting down the servers. More and more, we're seeing that we can actually boost up resources, disrupting service. Worst case scenario, we turn off a server, reconfigure, reallocate, or allocate new resources, and then turn it on again. It takes just a few minutes. So, cost effectiveness is hard to speak to, but anecdotally, I would be shocked if there weren't massive savings because of the time that is not spent dealing with problems, money that is not spent upgrading or replacing equipment when it fails, or upgrading equipment as needs change. It would be shocking to me to find that the costs weren't lower. And certainly if they're equal, the value is much greater.
Yeah, and just adding to that again, with the technology is advancing just super rapidly. So what's neat about it is we can automate a lot of these jobs that used to be a lot of click-through processes. So you'd have to have, an intermediate IT guy clicking around and making sure that they've got things rolling, set up a bunch of SQL strips. Now with the advancement of PowerShells, we can automate a lot of this type of maintenance and monitoring, and then effectively have somebody kind of monitoring those jobs for inception. So that level of service where you'd have to hire somebody, so a typical value prop is hire somebody. They would maintain the lights and the boxes and make sure that these routines are running and go through that process. We can offer that same service, but at a really reduced cost, because you actually don't hire somebody, and it's just kind of a part of a weekly routine that we run through in literally a couple hours a week. So it's really, I think, shifting the economics of it. And again, what Elliot said in the beginning of this was, well, we see a lot of our clients not hiring IT staff, and in fact looking to outsource that just because of this as well.
It's one more comment as well. It's not just in production infrastructure that we're seeing the benefits. We've always had a challenge when it came to development infrastructure and development and test environments. Certainly, production environments are required, but clients haven't always been as eager to maintain a dev environment or a test environment, especially those that are oriented towards continuously enhancing the features or the capabilities in their solution. And so now with the with cheap and easy access to cloud infrastructure, it's really a no-brainer to maintain a dev environment, for example, or a sandbox environment that we can have sort of on standby and keep it. We have a simple service, for example, to keep a dev environment in sync with production on a every couple weeks basis. We sync it with production, and that way, anytime that there's an issue that arises in production, or anytime a new enhancement is requested, a new report, a change, we don't have to spend a bunch of time creating a dev environment or catching up from the last, maybe the last time we did something was 4 or 5 months ago, and the dev environment isn't as easily available, or it's out of sync. We can just pop into that live dev environment, just basically turn it on and start doing the work we need to do. It's much easier now.
Have you used this approach, or have you adapted to it by changing anything about pricing and packaging? I mean, I think of the cloud solution provider model and some of the flexibility that's supposed to offer partners in sort of building out their own packages. Does that go all the way down to, say, bundling in some of these kinds of sort of long-term ongoing services too?
We used to think of things in the project world, right? How you look at the task and the activity and how many hours it's going to take. And we're really looking at things now that, although they are, there's still some human effort involved, but it's really more of a productized service, right? It's bundled with either a license, which might be a D365 license, or alternatively, it might be some services that we're bundling on top of an Azure subscription. So, it's really changing the way we can go to market, even to the point where we're even looking at ways to bundle implementation with those particular licenses, right? So rather than it looking like something that's, here's a bunch of hours and a big bunch of capital expense, it's X amount of dollars over the course of months, and ultimately by the end of that, you get an implementation plus a fully supported system. So it's really changing the way we're looking at the world, and it's kind of forcing a really interesting conversations as well in our organization about what are the next services that we can effectively productize. So it's changing our conversations internally and forcing us to really stay on top of what's coming down the pipe from a technology perspective as well.
Yeah, I imagine that would just change your whole way of measuring up potential engagements and potential, like you said, service offerings.
I think it's going to create a number of benefits for customers that weren't accessible before, because all of a sudden partners shift away from being simple resellers or distributors of a product to creating their own unique offerings that align to value propositions that they've identified. So it allows partners the opportunity to differentiate from one another, first of all, and also create more value for customers because we can bundle the services that we offer with the subscription pricing that Microsoft offers for its cloud services to create these sort of very compelling offers for clients. On the flip side, however, I think it will make it more difficult for customers to comparison shop. As a VAR, we've always been subject to price shopping, which is not something that we particularly enjoy. Of course, you can go through a long sort of process of demos and solution qualification with a prospect, then provide a quote only to have them shop it around to your competitors and see if you can find a better price. So, from our point of view, it'll reduce the ability to do that because what we bundle with Dynamics 365 for sales, for example, will differ from what other Microsoft partners bundle with Dynamics 365 for sales. So customers will need to become more savvy when shopping around and go further than just price comparisons into and ask real questions about, well, what am I really getting? What beyond access to this technology, what is the partner really offering me? What skills and expertise are they offering me? How is their offer going to deliver the business outcome that I care about? And I think ultimately, that will be a benefit, but it's a mind shift for customers.
Yeah, and just bring it back to the original point of topic is why that's interesting to us versus Salesforce is Salesforce's channel really forces us to be a project-based business. That's kind of the model. They'll sell the software to the client and then we implement it. But effectively that limits you in terms of being creative around what solutions you can provide. Whereas again, the Microsoft kind of stack and where they're going right now is offering us lots of different options to provide value services to our clients in a different way, and it's more exciting than just lining up projects, right?
Is there anything from Microsoft itself that you and your team are really eager to see them roll out that maybe I guess from a partner sort of support side that they've talked about, but that they haven't yet delivered on, something that you really think will be the next important step for you as a partner?
Well, for us, it's kind of a boring thing to be honest, but it's something they've been talking about for a while, and it's a tool that they're developing, and I'm not even sure if it'll get there, but it's a tool for CRM, and in particular on-premise CRMs. They have data migration tools already, but what they're really trying to push for is a tool that allows a partner like ourselves to actually create an upgraded package, including the data that is ready for the cloud. So it's basically a tool set that would allow us to do that. And why that's interesting is that, as I said earlier in the conversation, to get cloud ready, it's a series of steps that you have to do on premise and go through like a bunch of kind of porting and refactoring, etc. So the reality is if Microsoft can come to the table with that, I think it opens up a lot of ability for us to get to the end state quicker and kind of skip over all that. I wouldn't call it non-value adding, but it's a lot of kind of non-value add for the client. They just want to get there, and you're going through an upgrade just to get there, but not really getting much. So I think that's something that's really, I'd say, interesting and watching with great interest. And of course, the other one that I think is really compelling, and I actually would even go so far as calling it cool, which is kind of nerdy of me, but Power BI's got some really cool things going for it, where again the commoditization of BI tools and the availability to actually stand up compelling visualizations with multiple data sources in literally minutes is really, really something that I think is going to tie all of these services together and has the ability to, I think if we do it right, has the ability for us to add a bit more value onto the services we provide as well.
It's interesting that you brought up the sort of tools that will ease a cloud migration. I think that's going to be something for the CRMs on-premise, but also for other products. I think there's, I think that might be a common theme. I think folks on the AX side are really eager for those kinds of tools, and probably NAV too, right?
It's not something that, again, we get a lot of business from actually doing that work, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, again, like we always say, let's figure out, I don't know if you read our white paper or not, but, the ability to do an upgrade is really dependent on adding additional value to it. Is there other things that you're trying to do? Has your company changed? Do you need to refactor due to changes in your business? That's a good time to do an upgrade because you can kind of justify it as opposed to just upgrading, right? So I think, again, that if we can take away that kind of unnecessary overhead, it'll be really important.
Well, with CRM Online, for example, I mean, you any clients who had that, correct me if I'm wrong, but you would have said goodbye to upgrade business anytime you put someone onto it, right?
There's still small upgrades, but at the same time, we still see a lot. Like I just had a call literally this morning and continue to have one basically every week about clients and prospects coming to us and they're like, hey, I'm on CRM 4 or on CRM 2011.
Yep.
I'm going to move to the cloud, right? So there's lots of those customers out there, and the upgrade rationale just isn't there for them, right?
Yeah.
I think the another perspective on that is, so the upgrade has really shifted to kind of more, it's often very much a re-implementation discussion more than anything. It means kiss your old version goodbye, your old solution goodbye, re-implement what you need and add new capabilities on a newer platform.
Mm-hmm.
So there's lots of these sort of like what we call legacy migrations still underway, which are upgrades. But in the future, upgrades will not be a huge part of what we do for clients that are already on a modern version. We published an ebook a while ago about future-proofing your Microsoft Dynamics NAV solution, which was all about, now that you're on a modern version and Microsoft is basically releasing versions, mini versions every month in the form of cumulative updates and a new version every year. Or in the case of CRM, they're just pushing out automatic updates. The idea of a solution upgrade it's no longer a big scary thing. It's incremental. It may take no effort at all. It might be just pushing a button and saying apply update. In the case of CRM, you're talking about you have to test your customizations and make sure that they work before pushing the button. But I think the really interesting thing for our business is that what that does is it frees up energy and potentially budget as well to focus on continuous improvement and adoption of capabilities rather than just keeping compliant with your version and making sure that the version of the software we're running is as current as possible and that it's supported by the vendor. Now we can focus on taking that time and energy and capital and putting it into evolving the solution so that it stays more current with the business needs. And that capabilities are evolved and that user adoption is increased and that more of the surrounding technology gets adopted as well. So, Jeff mentioned Power BI, that's something we often, you go into a sales conversation and you show all these capabilities and customers get very excited because all these capabilities exist. But what we found in the past was they didn't get adopted very much because the budgets were exhausted just implementing and the core solution upgraded. Now we can finally start talking about these things in a more realistic way and seeing them deployed more frequently.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing that we're awaiting anxiously is the fall release of D365 Business, which is effectively NAV for finance, but from what we've heard, will be on parity with NAV 2017. So that'll actually be a full subscription to NAV in the cloud. So we're kind of waiting for that to happen, which will be quite exciting as well.
Yeah, I agree. That's a huge milestone that Microsoft needs to hit. To keep that.
Yeah, it's pretty massive.
Yeah, to keep that momentum moving in the right direction with 365.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of kind of interest. What's interesting about the initial release is it's great for smaller companies, but it's just not quite there yet. Like we actually were demoing some inventory features and just having some of the basic reports of like picking slips and packing slips. They're coming, but they're not quite there. So can't wait for it to actually be a fully robust product that we can capability.
in talking to other partners who have sold 365 for financials, as it's called now, but it's going to change in July, right? But essentially, that's the common thread I've heard, is that there's a very sort of narrow band or narrow segment of prospects who can take what it has today and use it and get value from it. And then the rest probably should be looking at NAV or other solutions. Because it's just not a right fit yet.
Yeah, it's kind of like, hey, we got Office 365 running, now we need a bookkeeping system.
Yeah.
It's kind of that's the conversation you have, right? So.
And it's a big lift. I mean, everything I've heard coming from people close to the Microsoft team is they've got a lot of work to do to reach that goal that you were talking about of bringing much closer parity in a lot of areas with NAV. But I think that will be, as someone told me, once some of that is there and the pricing differential can stand up against it, because I mean the pricing is quite different. I mean it's a substantially lower price. Even at a subscription, NAV subscription level, it's substantially lower.
Oh yeah, it's great. Like the conversation again, talking to a client, when you start off and say, oh well, by the time you stand up software and by the time you stand it up in an environment, when you buy the boxes, that's going to be $60K of your budget versus it's going to be like $79 a user. It's a way different conversation. Right?
That high, actually? I thought it was even lower than that. I thought it was in the $50. Well, maybe that's US dollars.
But I think they're going to add on the operations side, which you'll see another incremental jump for sure.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, and I think maybe getting back to Jeff's point, I mean, there's just so much else. Even if it's not a 365 for financials, even if it is a CRM or even perhaps I don't know, we'll have to see what the 365 Business Edition sales looks like, because that's really kind of, nothing. I really haven't heard there's much to see quite yet, but what that does for customers, because I think there's this vision, right? I think that you were maybe talking about, Jeff, that if you're not spending money on some of these other areas, you can look at let's provide a more tailored UI for different types of users, or let's build Power Apps, or let's get some great reporting capabilities added to the user experience, and let's invest in those areas where maybe they were just being cut before. That sounds like the vision.
Yeah, that's cool. It opens up some neat opportunities for us as partners, but also for clients as well. Like, it obviously depends on their subscription, but whatever version of their say D365 and or Office subscription, you get some bundled goodies in there that they can take advantage of, and that's, again, it's opening up a world of different avenues, by connecting Cortana services, for example, and using Microsoft Flow and a few of these kind of areas, which actually connects the apps through more automated speech or through AI type mechanisms. It's actually making the platform pretty cool, and the ability to actually do some of that work as a partner is quite exciting. I think for our consultants as well, right? Because they're using some new technology that they haven't necessarily touched before, but at the same time, it's going away from the old traditional integration methods, whether that's web services or SSIS and these types of things, and actually using some of the out-of-box tools and configuring. So everything's moving to a more configurable platform, which is all ending up in the goal of, we're getting to that endpoint for the client quicker, but with more additional features. So it's kind of a compelling case, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking ahead a little bit. I think the next big opportunity that we'll have to hear from Microsoft on this, I think, is going to be Inspire in July, unless I'm missing something. And I have that on my mind because I just got hit up by Microsoft to just be alert that they're already starting to talk about it. Today. Right. It's one of the priciest events out there. But I can't really say anything negative about it. It's been consistently a useful, and I think we might have met there for the first time, Elliot, at one of the WPCs in the past year. They sort of blend together, honestly, year to year, but that might have been how we connected initially.
Yeah, I think it was Convergence or WPC.
Well, Jeff, Elliot, thank you both so much for talking today. I think we'll wrap it up there. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about, or other things coming up that really have your attention these days?
I think we've covered a lot, and I think it's early days still. I do applaud Microsoft for their speed in terms of getting things to market. It took them a while to get there, but now it seems like we're seeing stuff frequently, and what we're seeing is quite good. It wasn't always the case. They used to get quite a bit of criticism for sort of rushing things to market and maybe not fully baked, but I'm quite happy with what we're seeing, and the pace of evolution is very exciting, and it's actually nice moving away from sort of these hotly anticipated mega launches just into a world where things sort of just leak out bit by bit, constantly sort of improving. It's really aligned well to our philosophy for how we want to deliver to our customers as well. So I'm just excited about where Microsoft's headed. I think they've got great leadership and headed in the right direction, and we're excited to be a part of it right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I think we'll end it there. Jeff, Elliot, thank you both so much for stopping by again, and I know we'll talk again soon.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thanks, Jason.
Have a great day.
Take care.
This has been the MSDW podcast. I want to thank Elliot and Jeff for joining this week. If you have feedback or ideas for the podcast, you can reach me by email at jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World signing off.